All across America and around the world, this is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio.
Welcome to Veterans Radio. I am Jim Fossone. I'm the officer of the deck today. We've got some great programs for you. We always want to remind you you can find more about Veterans Radio at its Facebook site or at the web, veteransradio.org, where we're on the web 24/7. You can find a lot of our podcasts there as well. We post new ones every Tuesday, so you can get a new story, a new interview, something you didn't know before by going to veteransradio.org. And before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First up, we want to thank National Veteran Business Development Council, nvbdc.org. It was established to certify both service-disabled and veteran-owned businesses. You'll find out how they can help your business by going to nvbdc.org. We want to thank Legal Help for Veterans. Legal Help for Veterans fights for veterans' disability rights all across the nation. You can reach them at 800-693-4800 or on the web at legalhelpforveterans.com. And finally, PuroClean. PuroClean is the paramedics of property damage. It provides water damage remediation, flood water removal, fire and smoke damage remediation, mold removal, biohazard cleanup. It also has a focus on veteran franchisees. You can learn more about them by going to puroclean.com. We want to welcome to Veterans Radio today Captain Drew DiMattia. Drew, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Great to be here, Jim. Thanks for having us. It's such a unique opportunity as you stumbled across one of our magazines down in Southwest Florida. So kudos to you, and again, thanks for the opportunity.
Well, we're glad. I don't think in the 21 years we've been doing this, we've ever talked to somebody with your organization or title. You are the national president of the American Merchant Marine Veterans Association. Drew, how did a nice kid from Maine end up at the Maine Maritime Academy?
Well, that's a good question. I stumbled across that particular industry crossing the Bay Bridge back and forth, being born and raised in Baltimore. And I used to look out over the Bay Bridge off of Annapolis, where the United States Naval Academy is, and there was always an anchorage of these bulkers, colliers referring to carrying the commodity of coal. There was some iron ore, and of course other kinds of vessels that were in and out of Baltimore. So it just amazed me looking at that particular horizon of vessels. And then there I go. So 10th grade in high school, I went to city schools in Baltimore, Polytechnic, and my 10th grade mechanical drawing teacher said, let's have a job fair day. So we put down our slide rules and our pencils, and we started talking about different careers uniquely to Baltimore. Similarly, uniquely to Michigan, when you look at the Great Lakes, we are a maritime nation. And when you look at Baltimore, we had many industries of 3 shipyards and the steel mill, Bethlehem Steel. And the history there speaks for itself in regards to being the industrial base of building vessels. And that dates back pre-World War II. So next thing I know, I'm interested in going to one of the schools, and I got involved with doing some research and it was recommended up to Maine. So here I am off to Maine, and we had a wonderful, I needed the discipline, young 18-year-old. I didn't know what the hell was going on. So I needed that particular quasi-military discipline, and I even took a little extra time doing it, but I stayed close to the curve of that and got through it. And next thing I know, 30 years go by, working from A.B. Tankerman on tug and barges, working around the world on different class of vessels, on LNG carriers, that's the liquid natural gas carriers. They were vessels built right in the United States, Quincy, Massachusetts, back in the 70s. I enjoyed that run for 12 years, working from third officer up to chief officer. And things get reallocated. Corporate world does what they need to do to look at the bottom line sometimes. And things change. And then, of course, 9/11 changed the game for everyone. And then you saw an onslaught of mariners, merchant mariners from all creeds, all over the world, carrying military cargo for the necessary buildup there in the Middle East. And I find myself, getting involved with that for 12 years or so, working my way up to captain. So 30 years goes by pretty quick, Jim. And particular in regards to this organization you mentioned, the American Merchant Marine Veterans, on one of my tours home, I'm having a cup of coffee. I'm reading my local paper here in Southwest Florida. The town's called Cape Coral. And there's an advertisement. Come join our cause, American Merchant Marine Veterans. And I'm looking at this thing, and I got to tell you, we all have a little brief history of certain segments of our evolution of whether it's the wars, whether it's maritime. That's my neck of the woods, traveling the world. And I'm looking at this group, Merchant Marine Veterans. Well, it never dawned on me that there was an organization, and nor did I ever see them advertised. So I call them up, I join. Next thing you know, I'm having lunches with these World War II fellows that had sea stories that you can imagine. And I just took a lure to that. I was like, wow, what a cool group. So we've had these lunches once a month. And to fast forward to now, Jim, we have one man standing. And there were women involved in regards to the Merchant Marine back in World War II. But we have one man standing left. He turns 99 soon. And I just found a passion to join this group. Now I'm the national president, and we're continuing with the legacy and education of this vital service.
Well, I think that's really why we've got you on, Drew, is I don't think the general public understands the role that merchant mariners played, not only in World War II, but really in every conflict the United States has ever been in. And as you mentioned, we're a maritime nation. You have to be a sea power. China is recognizing its need to be a sea power, and there is talk about rebuilding the Navy, but you got to have more shipyards, you got to have more mariners, you got to have more chiefs, mates, the whole thing, to get back to being a real maritime nation. And I mentioned you went to Maine Maritime Academy. There are a handful of these maritime academies. There's one in the Great Lakes. The United States has the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point, New York. So there's a whole industry, a whole educational and process by which one moves on up to the role that you have, which is a captain, a master mariner. But talk to us about why it's important for the nation to have this civilian maritime capability.
That's a great question, and it's a great lead in regards to how you highlighted some of the academies. And if you will, let me bring in Massachusetts Maritime, New York Maritime, also called SUNY Maritime. Go down the coast and come around to the Gulf of what we're going to hear now, Gulf of America. You got Texas Maritime, and you got California Maritime. So when you look at these schools and how these schools were even initiated as far as training, it was exclusively for what FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, saw. And during our industrial base, you're talking post-Great Depression. Now you're looking at here we are with the Lend-Lease program. The importance, and I'm bringing in a couple other subject matters pertaining to like what occurred in World War II, but the importance of the Merchant Marine. And if you look at the flag, Jim, you'll see in peace and war. In peacetime, you need a vital, vibrant industry, which includes not only the assets that have been built in our industrial base and our shipyards, but you need to have the manning. You need to have the training of the specific trades of the mariners. And it doesn't just pertain to the academies, it pertains to the apprenticeship programs and the trades programs and what they call coming up through the forecastle. So when you say coming up through the forecastle, come up through the hawse pipe. Let me just say that the hawse pipe's the proper terminology. So that means you come up from starting positions as an apprentice, and whatever department, the galley, the steward department, the engine department, or the deck department. And I'm being kind of versed in regards to your direct question of what's the importance to it, but the training is an incredibly important component. the demand of having a forward deployed, having the presence of trade commercially, right? And more times than not, lately in my generation, we've carried what we call hybrid cargoes, where we also carry military cargo. So with all the different kinds of freights and commodities and what we carry, the merchant marine has always been an auxiliary to the U.S. Navy. So again, it's more the definition why the merchant marine is important. We need to have a component of a supply chain, the vital supply chain of cargo, to support these conflicts. And obviously the conflicts abroad are in a NATO kind of alliance or allied forces that need these essential cargoes. And not only do the military forces that are forward deployed on the front lines, we're also bringing humanitarian aid for countries that we assisted prior to World War II going in. FDR didn't want the war. Nobody really wants to go to war, but you got to keep things in check. What we did back then was the Lend-Lease program, where we were giving up ships. We were hauling the proper provisions and all the supplies necessary to get Russia through its turmoil, to get Britain through its turmoil. So, the merchant marine is absolutely critical, and it's a supply chain.
Yeah, I think you've really hit it there, because I think since the pandemic, everybody has learned the word supply chain and logistics, and it really is. That's what this is about. It's being able to move massive amounts of material over the oceans to wherever our government may need them. And this is not a new thing. I was sort of surprised when I saw the flag that represents the American Merchant Marine Veterans, and we're talking to its national president, Captain Drew DiMattia. But I didn't know what the 1775 was about on the flag. You just told me. Tell that story again. It's interesting.
Yeah, so the Merchant Marine been around since the founding of our country. So we're talking the exact date in 1775 is June 12th. Now, I don't want to mess around with any of our U.S. Army folks, and we always keep in our lane. June 12th is 2 days before June 14th, the birth of the Army. So June 12th indicative is General Washington understood that the armaments of the British were coming in, and it just so happened that he ordered Captain Jeremiah O'Brien to man a sloop that was called the Unity up in Machias, Maine. And so they manned this with civilian mariners. They were called privateers back in the day. And they manned this vessel, the Unity, and one after the Margaret, the British vessel Margaret, that was full of arms and whatnot. And we succeeded. We succeeded in that particular first onset of June 12, 1775, of the Merchant Marine taking a position in the maritime front, conveying power. Now, today, Jim, if you care to reflect on it, we're not an armed service. Though in World War II, they did arm the vessels that have a little bit of a defense mechanism with a 3-inch or a 5-inch gun with a supplement of Navy armed guards on board. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but, significance is the June 12, 1775, and here we go with the 250th anniversary of our United States Merchant Marine.
Yeah, it's really interesting that the history reaches back all the way to George Washington and the recognized need to be able to move goods, supplies, armaments by sea. And in World War II, it really came to pass, the involvement of the U.S. Merchant Marine fleet. A lot of them were sunk. The Germany understood what was going on. But it took a long time for Congress to sort of recognize that effort. And I think it was only in 1988 that those who served in the Merchant Marines received veteran status. And that's a little bit of what the organization was about. The American Merchant Marine Veterans was working towards recognition, wasn't it?
That's exactly right, Jim. You said that so well, and leading into why the AMNV, American Merchant Marine Veterans, was founded. So 43 years after the war, January of 1988, they finally received veteran status. it took a long measure of persuasion of the fact finding and all the statistics that occurred. But AMMV was founded by individuals, mariners, and their families that were so advocating the cause of the Merchant Marine Service and what they did to be part of the winning combination in World War II that played out. And they wanted to get the flag up. They wanted to get recognition. And with different economics of looking across the crew from captain to whitebird to ordinary, whoever you are, everybody has different definitions of their successes. But the one thing that remains solid to the AMMV cause, founded by the World War II back in 1984, right here in Lee County, Florida. And then it went across and it sprawled all across the country, times 75 chapters, over 5,000 members, and their cause was valiant. I mean, it was incredible with what they achieved. It took a long time to do it, 43 years after the war, and finally getting veteran status. And we continue to ring the bell. We continue to get recognition for these individuals. And of course, as you see the legacy, most of these individuals some are nearing 100. We have one up in Pigeon Falls, Wisconsin, Reynolds Tomter. He was 100. He's 107. 107.
That's from straight good living.
That's from straight good living. I got a fellow here in Cape Coral that's turning 99, and he still drives. He meets me for lunch. We go to the pub, have a beer.
Well, there's the real reason. I want to do two things before we run out of time. I want to tell everybody, if you're interested in this organization, if you've never heard of it, you need a place to start looking around. Go to ammv.us. That's the website, ammv.us. And I think one of the things I also want to try to get across here, and Drew, maybe you want to talk a little bit about it. Being a mariner has been, I'm sure for you after 30 years, a great career. You've seen the world. You've done all sorts of things. So for young men and women out there thinking, I got a little wanderlust, I want to do this, this may be an option, but it also creates an opportunity to serve your country when called upon. As you said, you carried hybrid loads, but at other times, there'll be shipments that are just pure humanitarian loads or pure military loads. So talk a little bit about the career and the opportunity.
That's a great question, Jim. So the opportunity in regards to coming aboard, and again, doesn't matter what your rank is. You can be anybody in the crew, but you're serving the cause of that vessel, serving the cause of, like you cited so well, serving the country. Could be humanitarian aid, could be an auxiliary to the Navy. And let's talk about the brown water fleet. So we're talking about the hinterland, whether it be the Great Lakes, all our coastal communities. These are documented, credentialed crew members that have gone through the disciplines of learning the trade of navigation, seamanship, engineering, hotel services, working in the galley. So the younger folks looking at a trade or looking at a position of not only, it's a good paying position. Normally all the rates across the board for all crew members, it is an attractive way to make a living. You do give up time at home, whether it's 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. The trade-off in regards to a heartfelt feeling of being amongst your crew, it's a second family, right? But again, you can define it as you stated so well, Jim. You are serving your country. And when you're looking at domestically, the trades around our coastlines, you are protecting homeland security. It is a front to national security to have credentialed U.S. citizens working on our U.S. flag vessels. There's all kinds of other things to talk about. We'll save that for a later show. But this is a blanket of security here. And then when you start going on foreign trade with long trips to different places around the world, a lot of times it is that hybrid cargo or it is that humanitarian need. So there's a multiple lore that got me attracted to it. We are trying like hell to become mentors and have an attraction to Sea Cadets, ROTC programs across the board and the high school level and teach counselors school counselors, college counselors that provide all your different kinds of programs for graduate studies or undergraduate studies need to know that there's a big demand, and it's a great career path. And again, like you stated, it's serving your country. We have a couple of proposals going on before us in Congress. There's a new act with Senator Kelly and Congressman Garamendi and two others that got what they call the Ships for America Act. It's a pending piece of legislation, but it's very comprehensive, and it talks about workforce development. Under that is what we're talking about, Jim, trying to mentor to the younger generations and understanding from the high school level, whether you're interested in the academies or whether you're interested in entering at the apprenticeship level. It's quite a program, and I had a great career. I've really enjoyed, like I said, the second family, and of course, you're serving your country.
Well, and I think it's hard to attract younger folks into this career unless they've been exposed to it, right? So that's what we're doing a little bit here. And you could go to ammv.us. Go down, check them out a little bit. They've got a great set of magazines that pop up regularly. So there's a lot of information if you're sort of thinking, maybe this is a career for me, and I like the idea that maybe it's at some point I can serve the country more. We are probably moving into a phase, and whether that's the next 50 years or something, where the country's getting back to the importance of the maritime environment. More talk about domestic shipbuilding and everything that kind of goes with that. I don't know how many U.S. flag vessels there are, currently, and why that's a challenge. But I kind of think we're the pendulum's swinging back, and you're going to have more activity in this area and more opportunities. Are there other organizations you might point younger people to if they were interested in exploring the career?
Absolutely. And in your neck of the woods, it speaks highly for what the Great Lakes represents for the Merchant Marine. It's a huge industrial base and a huge opportunity for getting aboard vessels, and no matter what position you care to sail in, what entry level you wish to be. And of course, I need to mention the Great Lakes Maritime Academy, as you did so well before. We have a great relationship with that academy. Superintendent Gerard Achenbach, he's an incredible supporter of ours. Let's go across to the spectrum of the entry level with the Seafarers International down at Piney Point, Maryland. Seafarers International, they have the incredible education program for your entry levels of all departments, engine, deck, store department. Again, I mentioned the store department, so that's where you're working your hotel services and the culinary, right? The culinary, the trade of inside the galley, cooking. But huge part. My dad was a cook in the Navy. He instilled in me the importance of the good meal, the social hour that you have, right? Yeah, Jim, let me mention this real quick. Nobody on board's a passenger, right? So
that's right. Everybody's doing some work. Yep.
Everybody's doing something, right? Now, a lot of times you come home today, you come off the ship, you've done 4 months at a time, 3 months, whatever it is. Oh, how's the cruise? Oh, yeah, it's a cruise, all right.
Yeah. Well, when is happy hour anyway?
Yeah.
I want to point out something, too, that we've been able to talk to a lot of organizations over the years that have received the Congressional Gold Medal. And in 2020, Congress passed the Merchant Mariners of World War II Congressional Gold Medal Act to recognize the merchant mariners for their courage and contributions during the war. And every time we get to talk to an organization that has participated in this, the importance of that recognition is not so much for the individuals, because as you mentioned, they're kind of all dying out. It's really their family and the community. It's a recognition to the larger community of mariners that the country recognizes this value. It really is something that when Congress can kind of coalesce around it and say, you know what, these guys and gals, but these guys ought to be recognized. I suspect that's an important, thumbtack in the wall for your organization that Congress gave them the gold medal.
Jim, spoken so well again, and you highlight such a crucial plateau of an event that we partaked in. We were a part of the design team with the U.S. Mint. We had World War II engaging with the design of the gold medal. And you're right. It's indicative of the individual with the service record and getting a 3-inch to the living World War II or an 1.5 inches to a posthumous award. You're absolutely so right. It's right that it's an award to the family. It's an award to the recognition. And just if I may, Jim, over 9,000 Mariners were killed and 12,000 were wounded during the war. And we're talking thousands that remain in the watery graves. Many don't have any marker whatsoever.
Yeah.
So you're so right in regards to the depth of this recognition. And we're not done yet. When I say we're not done yet, the Maritime Administration is helping us out. And we're continuing to again, toll the bell and carry the torch in regards to these individuals. It's absolutely crucial. Let me mention something about the gold medal in so much as when you look at the depth of those wounded, and it highlights in that piece of legislation that was passed, is a medal citation given to mariners that were wounded, killed, or impacted by the war. Well, guess what we have that everybody knows, Jim, is the Purple Heart. Everybody knows what the Purple Heart looks like, knows why somebody receives it, and we honor and cherish those who have signed that blank check, and they're the armed services. The Merchant Marine is that gray area of not understanding that back in the World War II, they had a medal called the Mariner's Medal. And that was indicative very similarly like the Purple Heart. And yet it's not spoke of or not understood. There are so many families that have questions in regards to, grandfather or grandpa, somebody that's out there in the watery grave.
Yeah.
And it'll be an endless amount of recognition. Just so you know, when you highlight our website, we're working on a convention in Norfolk first week of April. We have the Memorial Day wreath laying at the Tomb of the Unknown. And then we're out on the West Coast outside the Golden Gate in the Presidio, where the American Battle Monuments Commission is installing a marker to represent and cherish the ones that never made it home from the Pacific Theater. So we're doing what we can to beat the drum and talk about this legacy, but I really appreciate you bringing up the gold medal, and that's recognitions that will continue on.
Well, I want to close out by pointing out to folks that there were nearly 250,000 civilian merchant mariners that took part in World War II. As Captain Drew DiMattia mentioned, over 9,500 lost their lives. And according to the National World War II Museum, that's a higher proportion than those killed in any military branch. So it was a dangerous job. That's why we're talking. This is history that people have forgotten. We wanted to bring it forward to our veteran radio listeners, but it also ripples forward. We can see where this is going into the future, and that's why we also wanted to talk to Captain Drew DiMattia, National President of the American Merchant Mariners Veterans Organization. Drew, we really do appreciate you taking a little time with us today.
Oh, Jim, I can't thank you enough. God bless your organization and the fact that you come across our magazine, and next thing you know, we're talking. It's a worthy cause. You have a worthy cause on Veterans Radio. Keep it up, and I hope to maybe we revisit and talk about another aspect of the Merchant Marine. It's a great career path.
You got it, Drew. Thank you.
And I want to thank everybody for listening to Veterans Radio today. I am Jim Faussone. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm a veterans disability lawyer at Legal Help for Veterans, and you can reach us at 800-693-4800 or legalhelpforveterans.com on the web. You can follow Veterans Radio on Facebook and listen to its podcasts and internet radio shows
by visiting us at veteransradio.org. That's veteransradio.org. We again want to thank our national sponsors, the National Veterans Business Development Council, nvbdc.org, Legal Help for Veterans, a veterans disability law firm with a national practice before the VA, can help you on your claims and your appeals. It can be reached at legalhelpforveterans.com or 1-800-693-4800. And PuroClean, a leader in property emergency services. It's the paramedics of property damage, providing water damage remediation, flood water removal, fire and smoke damage remediation, mold and biohazard cleanups. You can reach them at puroclean.com or 800-775-7876. We also want to thank our local sponsors. This would include the Charles S. Kettles chapter of the Vietnam Veterans of America, that's chapter 310, VFW Graf O'Hara Post 423, the American Legion Irwin Preskin Post 46 in Ann Arbor as well, the VA Ann Arbor Healthcare System, and certainly the National Vietnam Veterans of America Association. You can be a sponsor by going to veteransradio.org, clicking on the About Us and our sponsors, and help us out. Keep this program alive for the 21 and 22 years. Keep us going for another 20. Thank you.